welcome to the very first Austin Glug event. And tonight I'm joined by Emily. Emily's here, so she's our very, very special host this evening.
So for 5 years, my friends and I put on a Texas art and beer festival where we paired up breweries from all over Texas with contemporary artists and helped them to collaborate and find sort of the similarities between their processes.
Keeps our relationship great. Aside from blackmail is... No, Keith's like the most positive person that I know. And when it comes to us trying to think of a really cool idea, he's probably the best person to reinforce it and say that what we're thinking of is really cool, and then come up with a really good idea, or rather come up with like a dozen really good ideas. Mm-hmm. So we have to be the bullies knocking down his really great ideas to try to narrow the concept into something that we think would work really well for the brand.
Yeah, and I really love the process because it's really fun. I mean, not only are they just like ideal clients of mine, but also dear friends of mine too, but also when we get together and collaborate and sort of spitball and throw ideas out, it only betters all of it all together. Like not just the concepts in mind that they may have, but even the visuals that I may propose later on, or like the design exploration for whatever the scope may be. But it's really, it takes like an army. I mean, an army of three, and then like there's a crew too that backs everybody here. But I feel like the three of our heads together when we get to collaborate and really align is when we get the best solution, right? Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
Timothy.
So Brian and I met each other a couple of years ago, working together, and...
Okay, it was like 6 or 7, but whatever.
A couple of years ago, and we decided that it'd be a cool idea to start a company, a small brewery down in South Austin, and the whole idea behind it was we wanted a really cool neighborhood place, kind of neighborhood focused, very approachable, very kind of something for everybody, available at any given time. And we met Keith kind of through mutual friends, pitching the idea of branding this new company, this new brew pub that we were trying to start. So,
yeah, buddy. Yeah, met these guys through a guy I was working with named Justin. He's now in South Carolina, but he was a guy who introduced me to these two guys, and I had been kind of like an independent designer for, gosh, I know I'm going on like 13 years or something here in Austin, but he and I had worked as like art directors for an ad agency and both left because we didn't want to do the ad game. We wanted to like focus on design and kind of align with our own creative ambitions. So he recognized that in me, brought me on, and then introduced me to these two guys and hit it off immediately. And it was really fun getting to work with these two guys because it was like talking to other designers, yet they're talking about beer. So it's like just a different medium, you know? You have like the alignment, that kind of like where you're like, you're talking about something that you are giving your blood, sweat, and tears, and it's just it's beer, and it's something we all enjoy. But like, I had a whole new appreciation because we remember when we went to your house and we did like a homebrew at the first time, right?
Yes, we did. Our pilot system.
Yeah, and it was pretty phenomenal because these guys were beer wizards. Like they really had educated themselves and they have had the experience prior to this, even with like working at Beerworks for a while, and then like branching off and wanting to do something that they creatively and I think also like who they are aligns with like what beer they're outputting. It's refreshing and really great. So
yeah.
So for Tim and Brian, at what point in your developing the brewery and starting off on this project did you start thinking about branding and start thinking about what you were going for?
Right from the start. I mean, we worked at Austin Beerworks, and their brand is amazing. It was definitely revolutionary for me. It was kind of a new, fresh take on what beer branding could be. And so, if you've seen that, all of us have seen that beer drop, and the beer tastes great and it looks great, and like it's really simple. The beer should taste how it looks, and it was really obvious that we needed to invest in that and really just focus on that from the get-go. A lot of people, especially in the beer industry, they focus. They're makers. There's people that want to get in there and do things with their hands, and they think that should be able to stand on its own. But it's also a business, and people need to buy it, and it's really just not that simple, unfortunately. Even though it might be the most amazing tasting beer in the world, if no one thinks that it looks sexy, especially anymore in such a crowded market, no one's going to buy it. And so we were, Tim and I were definitely on the same page about that right from the get-go.
Yeah, totally. And the whole idea behind kind of branding, right, is it's supposed to be telling a story, right? Like John from Fairweather just now showed us a bunch of images of their cans, and their cans look like a picture book, like a children's book, and I could create a story just by what I'm seeing on the can. So Brian and I both knew how important the identity was gonna be, even though we knew that we weren't gonna be necessarily competing in package stores and grocery stores and things like that. We still wanted to make sure that the brand told a story, and there was something that was very important that people could communicate with, they could identify with, and really bring people into the space.
So what are you trying to tell people about St. Elmo, about the brewery, about you guys through your brand?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Beer.
Yeah, beer.
It's on St. Elmo Road.
You did it!
I think it's
you know how to find it.
Yeah, it's almost not trying to say so much. It's kind of letting it speak for itself. I think it's really
Ringo
nice.
Starr.
Right?
It's the not playing that's the magic.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really refreshing to walk in a place that's unassuming, I think. I think there's a loss of that in Austin, personally, because people try to pretty things up in this town, and they've been doing it for over a decade. And I think what's so nice is that it really comes through when you walk into St. Elmo space, and I want you guys to talk about also what we're looking at some point, but it's really nice when you walk into St. Elmo, and that was kind of the thought process, is really coming forward in a place where you really do want to drink a beer. It's not just tacking shit up on the wall and just trying to be kitschy and formulaic. It's really trying to come forward and be honest, where would you actually really want to hang with your friends, and where would you want to bring your family, and it has that communal vibe there, and it definitely is exuded, and that's something I really identify with personally. Even if I weren't working with these guys, I'd want to drink beer here for sure.
That's where our brand, we don't have packaged beer outside of the brewery, and so, it is limiting in a way, but the brand really goes into the space and the environment and how the beer tastes and all of that, and it really just kind of keeping it ultra minimal and simple is a huge focus for us, and it's actually pretty hard to do, to stay creative and to keep things fresh, but also to not really go overboard. Because we were talking the other day, and in our brewery, you can't find our logo. And we did that pretty intentionally because I've been to gift shops and other breweries where it's literally their logo is I guess you can find it on our glassware, but it's everything everywhere, and it's just way overboard, reminding you where you are. And we really just want people to be able to come together in their neighborhood, have a beer, and just chill.
Yeah. So. That was a really interesting conversation. Not just slapping your logo everywhere and reinstating, trying to be salesy. It's more about painting the experience, And that was something too, aligning with the utilitarian kind of vibe, but also really letting the beer be the hero at the end of the day. That's really what it's about, Experience. It's what we all want. But yeah, these are kind of some photos we put together too of, I don't know if you guys want to show it. It's really amazing when we were going through archives of this stuff the last couple of days, but some before and afters, you guys can kind of see what it was. I mean, this place had what were they painting cars in this place before? And then you guys
originally it was a paint shop. Yeah, I think it was built in the 60s or 70s, and then before we took it over, it was a alleged electronics recycling center that was also a nonprofit that also had very rabid dogs in it and plenty of meth, and but it was also beautiful. And we knew we wanted to be on St. Elmo, and it had this great asphalt side yard with a couple 18-wheelers full of glass in it. It was pretty tight.
Oh yeah, where is it?
And
there it is.
Yeah.
To the left,
that was after we cleared them out.
Yeah.
But that's
so
what the beer
trash,
garden used to look like. But yeah, it was all very rough, and it was all very, just DIY. God, I hate that term.
I mean, but this is honestly for me personally in my career, the first time I ever worked with a client where these guys were just very hands-on. I mean, look at these blueprints. I mean, they had really thought this out. You're looking at the beer garden, the bottom low end, and then how they're gonna handle the taps at the top left. I mean, it was very methodical, and it was
we were winging it.
It was you were winging it, but it was really cool to be a part of that process. How do we do this all together, and how do we build an environment? Because at the end of the day, every designer here can agree, it gets really stale and boring when you're looking at a screen all the time. We all long term, I would assume, want to be a part of building something like this, where you're how does it feel here? What is this like? What's something that's going to stick to your ribs and like you hold on to? It's like leaving room for discovery, and like that to me is what it's all about. It's just like leaving room to be inspired by that, and I think these guys exude that with like almost a utilitarian, straightforward, simple kind of aesthetic and feeling. And you can see like the top bar, what it was before when the guys built it, before they poured the concrete, and then what it is now and how it fills up, usually on the weekends. It's pretty rowdy. It's fun. It's a fun place.
So one of my favorite things about St. Elmo and your brand is your interesting naming conventions. So you can talk about that a little and tell us how those come to be. What comes first, the beer, the name?
Sure, both. It depends. So the naming was something I did as a home brewer just because I couldn't think of anything else. I was like, why don't we just call these people names? And because naming it's a really contentious issue in beverage in general, especially beer. You know, there's 7,000 breweries in America, and we have definitely named our beers things that were named at other breweries that we didn't even know. And anyway, so it just seemed like, spicy IPA or whatever. I can't even do the 2 words. We just like pick one word, and naming seemed really straightforward. So when you give it name, you automatically give it a little bit of personality, and then you can talk about it as being stubborn or sexy or ruthless. And it really just kind of opens up a different conversation about the beer where you kind of intertwine what it looks like and tastes like and its experience, and that's really, personifies it. It just makes it really identifiable.
Yeah. Yeah, and one, at least, especially because we started the company thinking that we would have like some flagship beers, which we do. We've got Carl Kolsch, which usually is on tap here.
Where's
at
Chris?
Brew and Brew. Should be on
Who
tap
drank
here.
it all?
Ran out.
But kind of like when we're talking about like personalities and like the names behind beers, it's fun to think about like, yeah, Carl's my man. Like Carl's the beer that I drink when I'm out on town, and it's fun to think of like, that's your best friend. I don't know. Seriously, right? I mean, like, that's the coasters that we've got out there on the bar at Brew and Brew, and those are things to lend a personality to the beer. That's what we're going for. And again, getting back to like the neighborhood feel, where we want it to be like a personal type of interaction. So when people come up and they're like, they actually name the beer that's on the board, and we serve it right to them. It's like, yeah, all right. You're getting to know Rosa. You're getting to know Loretta. Like all the different beers that we have on tap, and hopefully the beer lends an ideas to like what we're trying to communicate to people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like the way actually how the beer's approached too, the old menu system that you guys that we are using in the last, or I guess the first 2 years, was really nice because it was kind of like what Brian was touching on, and the way that Tim's describing it, where it's almost like poetic. It's not just like it's hoppy, it's dry, it's thick and dark or whatever. It's kind of like, it's nice to just kind of be a little bit more straightforward and like be like, it's a little bit flowery, or it tastes like someone's van, or it's like, I mean, wasn't like Angus like that. It was like van cacao. Yeah.
Vans.
Yeah, exactly. And Vans, yeah, Vans too. Vans, shoes, not Boogie Vans, yeah. But
That's John.
But that was really refreshing too, is not just being so kitschy, and like the way that these guys were kind of putting these beers out to where it's a relatable factor where you can use any adjective. It doesn't need to be kind of like, I don't know, too kind of like, we've heard it all before, like super hoppy, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Stout driven, really, it's nice to have something different. So I think St. Elmo really embodies that.
And it's now like snowballed, so it's like sometimes we'll come up with a name, or sometimes we'll come up with a beer and then, like work the other way. And so we came up with this idea for a beer. I wanted to make a Bock beer, but I couldn't get any lager yeast. And so a Bock is the lager. And hey, not everybody knows that. Yeah. But so I created a malt bill for a Bock, and then we were trying to figure out to use our Kolsch yeast to brew it. And anyway, we came up with Ramathorn. So Bock means ram in German, and Ramathorn from Super Troopers. And it's not like super funny, but it works.
Yeah. There's a sense of humor behind a lot
It's
of
hilarious.
it. It's really funny.
It's really good.
Yeah, and it should be that.
They're very punny,
Yeah.
all of you.
Very punny.
Good job.
Definitely. Yeah.
Some more than others. We have just a couple minutes left, so if you
Oh
want to
shoot! Yeah.
show us
Let me kind of like
what you've
run
got.
through this. So this clicker's not working, but where's Kat?
Cat the clicker.
Kat. Hey Kat, this isn't work. How do I turn this on where it's not working right now? I'm not sure. You want me to hold the laptop? Oh, it's off. Okay.
Although it's still not working. Something will fuck up.
Do you want me to hold the laptop and scroll through?
Something fucked up.
There it is. Awesome.
As
Okay,
promised.
so I'm gonna kind of like run through this in terms of like the branding, but this is kind of where we started. I mean, it is very different than I don't know how many of y'all have been to St. Elmo, but if you know the current aesthetic, what you see on the hats, the merch, the bar, the promotional collateral, like everything, it's so far different. And this is a very early stages when we started out, and a lot of this stuff was really derivative. I think I remember. I don't know if you remember this at all, but Brian at the time was like building chicken cages for a good while.
I used to build chicken coops for an actual job.
Yeah, and I was really inspired by that because it was kind of this idea of like where they were with like getting out of beer works and starting anew. It's like that idea of like the death and rebirth, right? Like the egg starting over, the reborn thing. So I started like placating more towards that sort of theme, and we tried to go down that rabbit hole, but no pun intended. But it was something that was really different and weird. And we look back at it now, like 3 years later, and it's like I don't know what the fuck we were thinking. I mean, it was fun stuff, and I wish we could use it, but it's so different. And we were in this space, like literally tacking up like the exploration on the wall, and I love Brian's like expression that where he's like, "Hold up, you're way off," in that one on top right. But I mean, it was an interesting exploration. We went really deep. We tried a lot of different stuff out, and some of it hit on the mark, and some of it didn't. And the bottom right kind of got closer to it, and it really played toward. We started carrying that mark out to everything else because there was something about what that is with like the E, and when you see that beer garden, like you think about like the fence lines, and like this little 3-stripe, like simple little like small icon, something so dumbingly simple that comes forward and is unassuming. It's like, man, that just marries well with the beer. You see it on any of these, and it's beautiful. You want to drink that, And so, yeah, we put a lot of work into all this. It was like, this is some science done by the legendary Joe Sweck, and he had helped out with everything in the space. That's a menu system on the far left. When we're still kind of rolling that out, kind of giving people a little like takeaway to kind of understand what they're drinking, consuming. This is really like the identity system. You really start to, I think as we kind of worked on this, we really started to like develop and evolve this. It was so funny because this was something that was never discussed in the very early stages. Like, here's the mark, but where does it go from there? And like, as a designer, you think about that. You're like, well, I've got the mark, but what are like the other elements that complement this? And like, what's the extension and like the umbrella of the brand? Like, how does this come through where you're like, I get it. Like, I'm living in the world of St. Elmo, and I really love working with these guys because they really do give me freedom to do that. Like, once we kind of got here, I think you were like, take it, Keith. Like, do what you want with this.
Absolutely. Like, the whole process, like, before we got to this mark was about 8 months. And think of it almost like a prism where it started super broad with white light. And we spent a lot of time going through a bunch of really random shit. And you just saw it. And then we eventually found this focal point, and then from that is where all of the rest of the color and the focus came, and then spread out into what we have now. And so we kind of use that as our ground.
Yeah.
And when we look forward into doing anything new, like our crowler, which is ultra, like this brand is, this logo is very simple, and we didn't want it to have any hops or barley or anything, and we didn't even really want it to be obviously a brewery. We actually got a lot of criticism at first because I put signs on St. Elmo and Industrial early on that just had this, and it didn't say brewery, it had arrows, and so many people would come in and say, hey, I didn't know where it was, I don't know what your logo looks like how was I supposed to know how to get here? And now it works because more people know the logo, but it was nice to kind of like have like a simple mark and then work from there into, like, oh, look at all this stuff, like it really does have a very common thread just from this.
Yeah, it gave us kind of like the parameters or guidelines, but we didn't want to even be held by that. It's almost like it's almost like a really fun challenge when you get to meet up with them. Because we'll just like go and like shoot the shit and get beers. It's like the most fun client where you're like, all right, guys, like, what do we want to do in the next 6 months? And we like outline this kind of. It is like that, right? Yeah. It's really fun. It's kind of like, I mean, I know people always say like don't mix like
lots of
business
shit
with
is
friends,
shot.
but
Well,
yeah, there's a lot of that, a lot of drinking,
Thank you,
a lot of
guys.
like just being honest with each other. It is that at the end of the day, like no bullshit. And And so it's kind of like, what do you want to do with all this? And we'll start like kind of outlining. I mean, this is like what, like 2 years of crazy. Most of this is like kind of event-driven stuff. But you see how it's still like all in the world of like St. Elmo. It's all like still a part of something that doesn't feel like divided. It feels like kind of all part of the same system. There's parameters and guidelines we're abiding by, but we're still being really fun with it. Like it needs to be fun. It's always going to grow. We as people are always going to grow, right? Like so, like a brand should move that same way. I think, you know, like St. Elmo. Like
Thank you.
Hell yeah, bro.
Preach.
I'm sorry to have to cut you off, but I think everybody needs to go grab a beer. We got to take a little break, but thank you guys so much. Very wonderful.